Hey there, everybody. I am Jeff. This is Tabletop Toolbox, and thanks for joining me here on episode number 67 of the Weekly Ratchet. Oh, say can you see all the board games we're going to talk about today? Well, you will in just a moment on the Weekly Ratchet. Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to the Weekly Ratchet. As always, I hope you've had a fantastic holiday week and weekend of getting to play some games with family and or friends. Not a whole lot of news here at the top of the show. I haven't been playing, well, I've gotten a couple of games in. There was an event over this past weekend. Actually, it wraps up tomorrow. Today is Saturday, actually the 5th. It's called RocketCon. It's sort of a gathering of friends here in the Richmond area. My buddy Ricky hosts it at his house, and I found out that the 4th of July is actually his birthday. He had a gathering of friends a bunch of years ago on his birthday when he had moved here. They came in from out of town where he had lived and were hanging out playing games. And I thought, we should do this every year. This is great. What are we going to call it, though? Well, hey, it's the 4th of July and it's Ricky's birthday. Let's call it RocketCon. So that's how that came to be. Unfortunately, this is the last one as he's moving to Spain. I think Spain. Maybe Spain? I actually don't remember. But anyways, he's moving out of the country in a couple of months. Anyways, yeah, that's really about it. The El Paso Great Western Trail game review came out this past week. A couple of people have checked it out. I don't really know if it's a game worth checking out, but it was a review copy, so I had to do that. I've been getting prepped for a bunch of other stuff I've got to get produced here before the end of the month when I head to Gen Con. So there's a lot of that going on. I'm trying to get a lot of games played. We're traveling a little bit tomorrow, which is why I'm filming this on Saturday. And so I'm going to be working on some scripts over the weekend and trying to get some filming done next week before we go out of town again. Anyways, enough about all that. I don't have any new games, but there is something to share with you. The first is this. That is the new Shure VP82 shotgun condenser microphone. No lapel mic. I am finally free of polo shirts. I've been wanting to get one of these for a long time. It's what a lot of the like Shut Up and Sit Down uses shotgun mics. I think they use a longer shotgun mic. They get a little further away from it. But those things can be expensive. So this was kind of a budget one to get me going. And I'm still going to be trying to figure out the audio here a little bit. Hopefully this thing sounds okay. I can actually monitor the sound now to some extent. So hopefully it sounds good, and I'll be continuing to tweak it. So stick with me. Bear with me. But anyways, I'm looking forward to working with that. This is the other new toy. This is a Panasonic HCX 2100. This is a semi-professional camcorder. It can actually be used by like film crews and such, news crews. It has a, I believe it's called an HCI or a DCI. What is this thing called? But the type of output that you would send off SDI that goes off to like a broadcasting van. So this thing's pretty heavy duty. I got it because it's got a wider aperture setting than the Canon HF G60 Vixia that you're watching me on now. This is going to let me do some really nice stuff with B-roll footage and getting that real nice bokeh effect on board game components. So that's why I went for this. It does have a really nice audio input head on top with phantom power, with gains, XLR inputs, the whole 9 yards. I don't know if I'm going to be using this for the Ratchet or for most of my reviews. Like I said, it might be a B-roll camera, but I might and then start using the Canon as an overhead camera. We'll see. I don't know. But again, working on no new games, but working on improvements to the channel, working on improvements to the quality of the content. And still as a one-man band, this thing should be able to work with a remote, with an app. And it's Wi-Fi capable. I have no idea what it even does with Wi-Fi. But if I can use it to sort of store my data a little quicker, that'd be fantastic. Or access it maybe through my network instead of having to move memory cards around, that'd be great. So anyways, yeah, looking forward to playing with this thing some more. And that's it. That's all the new stuff here in the studio, if not the game room, but that's okay. Let's go ahead and get the question of the week. All right, question of the week. Last week, I asked you how many games from 2025 have you played here already, and what was your favorite? Now, this was a little bit of a mixed bag. I believe I made the comment that I know that not everyone here is called to the new, as I kind of tend to be, and honestly, as a YouTube channel, kind of has to be, but that's totally okay. So we got a wide variety of answers here. Up first was Teshra, who said he's played 6 games from this year, and that his favorite so far is Star Trek Captain's Chair. Yeah, we've even talked about this one a couple times. I need to get it played again. I don't even know if I finished my first play. My good buddy Daniel wants to get this played, so I'm hoping here in the next couple of weeks we'll get to table that game again. I need to remember how to play it. But as I mentioned, I'm hoping that my recent plays of Imperium will kind of help me remember Captain's Chair a little quicker. Weston said he's played about a dozen games from this year, but that nothing beats Galactic Cruise at this moment. He said Speak Easy, coming soon from Vital Lacerda, might dethrone it, but for now, to space he goes. Yeah, we're going to see this one come up again for sure. Maybe from more folks than one. Definitely a neat game. And I did actually see the design crew at the Origins Game Fair. I only had a very, very brief moment to chat with them. Picked up some sleeves for the cards. That was about all I did because those agenda cards get a lot of use. But anyways, that is definitely very, very hot title still right now in 2025. Wonderflonium said if Flip 7 counts as a 2025 game, that's it for him, that it is a great family game. Flip 7 does show up as a 2024 game, and I won't dwell on this subject, but it's a common occurrence, and it's, you know, obviously not picking any fun on it because we're actually going to see that happen again here. But you have a lot of games that say it's a 2024 game, but maybe doesn't come out until 2025 or later. And then sometimes you'll see games that are listed as a 2025. You know, when those games are put on BGG, that year kind of gets entered at that time. And from what I understand, you can change names of games, but you cannot actually change the year of the game. If I remember correctly, that's what I have heard in the past. So that's not really surprising. And of course, also has to do with your locale, when that game may have shown up in your area. You know, it may have been a Kickstarter that delivered to people sooner. I don't think Flip 7 is, but it could have been a Kickstarter that delivered sooner and a retail came out, you know, early in the next year. Who knows? So not a surprise, and of course, not a big deal. I need to check that game out here at some point. Star Shocker said he doesn't track his games, but he knows he's played a few from this year, and that right now, Wondrous Creatures is his number one. Here's another example. I checked this one out. It actually finished delivering to Kickstarter backers in November of 24. So it is a 2024 game. I need to play it. I'm actually hoping to get it played Monday, I think, of next week. I'm going to try and put that one on the table in front of my wife and I. I am really looking forward to checking that one out. Bad Comet, excuse me. Makes some pretty decent games, so I'm looking forward to checking that one out. The Awkward Meeple said Finspan is the only game he's played from this year, as the rest of his 2025 game orders are on hold and haven't shipped yet. He said, however, that he's played a ton of games on Board Game Arena. Now, I'm not sure if you meant 2025 games on BGA or just how many games you played on BGA so far this year. I would think that for 2025 games to be on BGA, maybe a couple out by now, but it takes a little while to implement those games on BGA. So I'm thinking you just meant games played in 2025 on BGA, not 2025 games. But anyways, again, not a big deal. I have played Finspan. Not my favorite of the trio, I gotta be honest. But you didn't really talk about it, so I'm guessing not maybe your favorite either. Yukon Zach said he was sure he had played several games from 2025, but most of them are in fact from 2024. He said he's only played 2 games from 2025, and neither of them were very noteworthy. Yeah, like I was saying, not surprising at all. Very, very typical of the way that BGG kind of works and how the game industry kind of works. And I'll kind of tease this now. I'm kind of in a similar boat. I've played a handful of games from 2025. A good number of them were okay. A good number of them are not so great. So I'm with you on that one. Tony Lawhorn, however, said he's played 89 different games, presumably from 2025, but that his favorite 2 was Galactic Cruise. He said the game he's played the most of the year is Wine Cellar. I want to say we talked about Wine Cellar, or someone mentioned Wine Cellar. I need to check that one out, or at least look into it. But yes, another vote for Galactic Cruise. 89 games, man. I know you're connected. I just don't quite know how. I'm looking forward to seeing you at Gen Con. I really am. Rentless said he's played no games from 2025, but has been catching up on several games released in 2024. He said he's fine with that, as he doesn't rush to play the newest games. Like I said, that is totally fair. Certainly not going to pick any fun on that myself. I will say that, and I'll dwell back on this here in just a moment, but most of the games I get to play of the year, I play at the Dice Tower Retreat, which is usually in August. So it's usually towards the end of the year that I get to kind of catch up on a couple of games from that year, also catching up on some stuff in the previous year. But I'm absolutely with you. I have played a ton of 2024 games in the past 7 months. So I completely understand. I mean, it takes them a little while to get to me, whether they're review copies or the Kickstarters, or even just getting a chance to play them. Some of these games I've had for a while, and only recently have I finally been able to get them off the shelf and get them played. And lastly, because I reminded him to post a comment, Jeremy Brooks said he's only played 3 games from 2025, including Crafting the Cosmos and Quorum. He said he didn't like any of them enough to buy them, but of the 3, Quorum was his favorite. I've only played one of those, Crafting the Cosmos, and we'll talk about it in just a moment. I had to go through the list. It was kind of funny. I did an advanced search on Board Game Geek for games that came out in 2025, and at first I was going through every title. Okay, no, don't recognize it. Don't recognize it. Oh yeah, I played that one. And then I realized I could just scan the plays column to tell me which ones I played. And I thought it was kind of interesting. I got to about 13 games from 2025 that I have played. 1 expansion, which is the Earth Abundance expansion, and then about 6 or 7 games that aren't out yet because of course they're Kickstarter previews. And so, and I cannot remember them all even off the top of my head. There is Ultimate Voyage, which I've done a preview for here in the channel. There was, of course, Wormwood, Sovereign Fall of Wormwood, which I really enjoyed. Several plays of that, of course, not out yet. And just a bunch more. The Food Truck Race game and several more that I was like, oh, no, that was not actually out yet. I can't use that one. I would have to say that of the 13 or so, I probably have to agree that Galactic Cruise is probably my favorite of those. I do have to say, though, that I've already kind of burnt out a little bit on it because it takes a while to set up. It's a gorgeous game. It takes a little while to set up. It takes quite a while to teach because there's just so many things that you can do. It's not a hard game, but I also just don't feel like, for all the times I've played it, I don't feel like there's a ton of variety to every play. It's kind of like I'm building rockets, I'm getting all the resources, I'm launching the rockets, I'm trying to collect a bunch of points, and rinse, wash, and repeat. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I just don't. It's not a game that I'm like, God, I can't wait to play that again. You know, like I played it. It's great, but I just don't know that it's going to be all that different from play to play. Anyway, that's my take on it. I will say that I'm very, very looking forward to Luthier, which I believe will be delivering here quite soon. I just had to confirm my address and all that kind of stuff. I believe that it's here in the U.S. The ships have arrived and it's going to start distributing here pretty soon. I'm still very anxious for Philharmonics, although I haven't heard anything about that game in a little bit. I think it is now past due. I think it was May that it was supposed to start delivering. Haven't heard anything about it, hoping that the tariffs haven't screwed that one up. And then, of course, as I believe that was Awkward Meeple mentioned, I think the Speakeasy game from Vital Lacerda, he's had a couple games that have come out in the past, Weather Machine, Inventions, that just thematically they didn't really interest me. Good games, just not really up my alley. Speakeasy, definitely up my alley. So I'm really looking forward to that one. And I'm thinking there's a good chance, possible chance, that any of those might upset Galactic Cruise as my personal favorite from the year. Anyways, that is it for Question of the Week. So let me tell you about some of the games I've played at RocketCon. Okay, so I went ahead and decided to film today, Saturday, because all these games are still really fresh on my mind. I've played just about all of these in the past 2 days. So I wanted to, make sure I sort of remembered rules, remembered mechanisms, and could, sort of speak from recent memory, as opposed to waiting until Monday when I've slept. The first game that we played this week, though, my wife and I first played this early this past week, and then we played it again today. This is Beasts and Diplomacy. Now, we've talked about this one here in the channel a couple times. Came in recently. This game is entirely AI derived in terms of art. And I will say this, the game looks pretty good. I really do like a lot of the monster cards that are in here. Some of them are definitely nightmare fuel. I'll be flashing some images up, obviously, as I chat about this. But a lot of the cards, I really did like the look of them. The board needs some work. The rule book just looks rough and is way too long and is way too detailed and too repetitive. But I've chatted with the designer, which I believe is Mike Cribble. And he knows about it. He's already working on another version of the rulebook. I need to check it out. He's asked me to kind of just proof it and see my thoughts. I just haven't had a chance to get to that. But anyways, we got to play this. Now, what this is basically at its core is a card drafting game with tons of synergy that you're trying to develop across a ton of different tags. So it's like Terraforming Mars on crack, because each of the beasts cards, and I'm going to tell you this right now, I keep calling them beasts, I keep calling them monsters, I keep calling them dragons. I can't seem to ever get consistent. They all mean the same thing for the next few minutes I chat about this game. But you're collecting these beast cards, and eventually you're going to be getting them played into your tableau in front of you onto a location card. Each beast has to have a location that they're kind of stored in. And then you're getting these diplomat cards that you're drafting all from this huge main board area. You've got beasts, you've got personnel, you've got diplomats, you've got traders, Traders. You have the location cards, which you're just taking off of a stack. They're all the same, basically. They'll look different, but they all serve the same purpose. They're all the same value of score or whatever. And then you've got these, I think they're called quest cards, which you're getting throughout the game that kind of give you some targets, sort of scoring objectives you can work towards. The diplomat cards are going to give you points at the end of the game. Everything scores at the end of the game based on having certain tags on the monsters present in front of you. They will also potentially give you money during the game if you or anyone else at the table plays a beast. I think I said monster, didn't I? Anyways, plays a beast that matches the symbols of one of your diplomats. So the diplomat will pay you even if someone else plays that beast. And I think that's where the diplomacy comes in at. Otherwise, there's really very, very little interaction and no real diplomacy in the game. In fact, for as much as you could hate draft, you could actually say it's quite anti-diplomatic. But anyways, the traders, you can sell your beasts to hopefully make some money. You got to match at least one of the symbols. The other two are optional, yada, yada. I won't go into detail. But the dragons have 6 different symbols that you've got to manage. They have a location that they come from, kind of like a burrow of this imaginary kingdom with a little crest and a little initial. And they're all easy to tell apart. This game is actually quite blind player friendly, or I shouldn't say blind player, colorblind friendly. So anyways, you've got a crest of a location of the that the beast is from. I told you it's a problem. You've got a color for each beast. You have a like sort of a species or a breed or whatever. You've got like cat, you've got dragon, you've got a flying one, you've got a fish, you've got a giant, and there's a couple others like a bug, and like I said, a few others. You have a element, which really doesn't mean anything in the game except for, again, just matching symbols, but you've got wind and water and fire and lightning, a couple others. And then you have whether it's nocturnal or diurnal, or whether it is omnivore, carnivore, or herbivore. And so again, you might have a diplomat that says they just want to see 2 yellow beasts in your tableau by the end of the game. Fairly easy. You may have one that says, well, I want to see 2 flying creatures. Not that difficult. Maybe a little bit more difficult. There's actually a percentage of likelihood of each of these tags to show up. Your player aid gives you all that stuff. And then you may have a really hard diplomat that says, I want a flying beast from whatever the J crest location is. Or I want a fish, but I don't want them to be from the G province or whatever it is. Again, I don't know what the names of the places are. They're all kind of made up. And so as long as you have those beasts in your tableau for each of the diplomats, you can score a bunch of points. And like I said, they may also feed you currency, which is called ore, just throughout the game. You play over 3 days, and it's just a lot of like placing meeples, placing workers to take these cards, trying to kind of get some synergy, trying to manage your funds, because there's only a couple ways to get money. There's no like income phase. Again, you can sell your beasts to traders to get money. There's a couple of these personnel cards that can come out. They give you like one-time effects. They may tuck under and modify the cost of location. They can actually tuck under and change attributes of a particular beast at a location, etc. And so it's a lot of just tag matching and symbol counting and trying to make sure that you've sort of satisfied all the requirements. There's a bunch of different things you're trying to work towards. You're adding more goals to yourself throughout the game with the quest cards, with more diplomats. And it gets to the point where there's a lot going on. But your decision space is never really very deep. It's just, I want that card. I place a meeple on it. I take the card. That's basically it. You could possibly find some clever synergies as I did in the game today. I really mismanaged my money. I actually then made a mistake, and then I drafted a beast that I thought matched the color of one of my traders, and I was wrong because the symbol of the colorblind attribute was black, and I confused that as it being a black beast, which I had drafted a black beast just to sell, and then realized, oh no crap, that's gray with just a black colorblind matching symbol. Oops, I can't sell this card. There went most of my income for the round. Now you got to pay this maintenance cost at the end of each round because you got to pay for, kind of like feed or maintain the beast, feed or maintain the location that they're stored in. Some of the other cards may cost you money. Anyway, there's a lot of maintenance costs to deal with. And like I said, there's a lot to manage. And so I really messed up some money. But then in the last round, I was like, well, I'm going to grab this card because it's going to let me play it. And I get paid for every card that's currently in my hand. And then I'm going to get this card and I can tuck it. And it's going to literally just give me money at the end of the round for all the beasts that I have. And so I had all this clever way in the last day. I made a ton of money, which did help me kind of rebound a little bit from the earlier financial mistakes, but not enough to win the game. Anyways, I do like it. I do enjoy the game. I do kind of feel like, and a couple of guys I played with today were griping a little bit about the shallowness of the game, despite all the different stuff that you need to manage. They're like, if they streamlined the tags, if they got rid of like 2 of the different attributes, which I could say you could easily get rid of color and you could easily get rid of the element aspect, or maybe the diurnal nocturnal, get rid of those. If you just kind of streamline some of that stuff, you could probably make this gameplay way quicker than it did. And still have a nice, robust experience without all the mental overload and without all the AP of trying to go, well, hang on, I need these 3 symbols. That guy's got 2 of them. Hang on, this guy's got 3. Which one had 2 again? Like, it just gets to be too much. But I do like it. And I do like the way some of these beasts look, despite it being AI. I think it's a pretty decent looking game. And I'm looking forward to putting together a video on this. I've chatted about it too much. I apologize, but that is Beasts in Diplomacy. Okay, real quick. I did play a couple more games in this past week of Bomb Busters. I won't belabor this, but I did get to introduce this to some friends at RocketCon, and it was really kind of funny because I realized already I have played this game enough that I have gotten pretty good at certain strategies, especially at 3-player. So we played it at 4, and it was a little trickier for me because I just haven't played it at 4 in a little while. But I also realized how comfortable I've gotten with certain things, or how cognizant I've gotten of when you should be confident and when you should not be confident. And I watched a player just go, all right, I'm going to go ahead and cut your 11. No, that was the 10.5 that immediately blew up and killed us all. Game over. And it was really kind of interesting. So we played a couple times at RocketCon, and then Friday I did end up staying home. I didn't go to RocketCon on Friday the 4th, and I played it with my wife and daughter, and we finally beat the exam. Woohoo! We finished game 8, which is the last game before you start opening the secret boxes. And so we finally got to open the secret box. It's adding a couple of new elements that I'm already looking forward to checking out. Just having a lot of fun with this. I think it might already be my number 1 played game. It's the game I've played the most of all times. I think it has now finally surpassed Crokinole, maybe. Has definitely passed My City, which I played like 21 times. I think we're right up to like 22, 23 with this. Because you can play it super quick, and if you lose, you can start right back up, play again. And I love it for that fact. Bomb Busters. All right, then, excited for this one. I got to play Civolution. And I'm going to blank on designer names. I can't remember the designer name. I'll flash it up because I should know it. But this is from the, I believe, same designer that made Project Gaia, that made Terra Mystica, I think Age of Innovation, which I need to play that one still. But it also uses, it's also the same designer. It is the same designer as Castles of Burgundy. So I don't know if it's the same designer who did Terra Mystica, but it kind of blends some Terra Mystica elements and a lot of Castles of Burgundy elements, which I have played Castles of Burgundy. It's been a little while, but I played that one. So this is a huge game, massive, and I cannot go into detail, but it is a game where on your turn, you have potentially dozens of different actions that you can take. The idea is that, yes, you're trying to sort of build a civilization across this not very big map, but it feels bigger than it looks. because you've got only certain areas that you can sort of cross into. Every movement is an action. You're trying to tuck sort of cards that sort of represent like new technologies, kind of, sort of. And each of those tucking is an action. You got a whole area of your player board where you're just managing different kinds of resources. Each sort of environment or biome on the map can generate up to 3 different resources, but there's 3 of every biome, and only one of them is going to provide one of those 3 resources. So you may start off over here in the woods, but you really need lumber, wood, why not? But it's all the way across the map and it hasn't been discovered yet. And it may take you ever to find it. And by the time someone finds it, it may take you half the damn game to get over there and get it. But you're managing these resources. You've got a spot where you're kind of tracking money, and everything is done with these little, like almost like a peg. And so if you have a peg in this slot, that represents I have a wood. If I have a peg up here, that's in the money slot, represents I have a money. Up here, it's food. And over here, it's something else. You can have focus, which lets you pip up or down your dice. You're going to have 6 dice or more throughout the game. You can also have... No, I'm sorry. Ideas. Ideas lets you pip up and down the die. Focus acts as any wild die. So it's still one of your little pegs, but I can spend a peg to act as any other die. Now, again, I'm all over the place because there's so much of this game. But on your turn, you're going to pick 2 of your dice, and you're going to play 2 of your dice, and there's all these little tiles on your board that are telling you if you play a 6 and a 1, you can do this. If you play a 5 and a 2, you can do this. A 6 and a 4 does this. For every combination of die, including a pair, 2 6s, 2 5s, all the way down to 2 1s, are different actions that you can take. And so you're sitting there with a couple of dice and the ability to kind of pip up or down some dice, and maybe the ability to just kind of have some wild dice, and you're going, what the hell can I do? And especially in the early game, when a bunch of us had no idea what the hell we were doing, it was overload in a way that I have just never quite experienced. However, as we got into it, a couple of rounds in, I did start to see some paths, at least for me, in the way that I was playing. I fell way behind in score. I was always last place. I never was not last place, but I did kind of catch up. In fact, what I sort of most celebrate is the fact that one particular player had 40 points and all of us had between 0 and 2. When I finished the game, I was less than 15 points from that player. So I had kind of made up some of that early gain that he got, and I just felt good about that. I was really frustrated early in the game and mid-game and most of the game because I just didn't know what I was doing. And of course, I was watching people just rocket up the scoreboard. And I was like, I'm just not getting this, or I'm doing all the wrong things or something. I did finally kind of get a little bit of an engine going a little late, too late in the game. But then, like I said, I did start to see some paths. I did start to actually make some big plays. It was too little too late. But I really kind of sat there the rest of that night, even driving home that night, and I thought, I did kind of like it. I could see the appeal of it. The one thing I liked about Castle of Burgundy, despite the fact that it's a big dice chucking game to try and get various symbols into your sort of castle, kingdom, whatever, and it was kind of boring, to be honest, but I liked that there was a lot of mitigation, and there is a ton, if not more, mitigation in Civolution. So even though you're beholden to these dice, and early in the game, that will be a nightmare. But again, you get some opportunities through a variety of cards and technologies and things that you unlock and just all kinds of stuff that you can start to give yourself a little bit more freedom, a little more leeway to get the things done you want to do. So like I said, it's a very, very difficult game to talk about because of just how complex this thing is. But I'm curious to check it out again. I was going to try and look into it solo. I understand that it has a bot to manage. There's kind of a lot to it. I don't think I'm going to get this game, but at some point I'm probably going to crack and I'm probably going to get this game. I'm going to regret it, but I'm going to, I feel like if I could play this game solo a couple times, or maybe like 2-player a couple times, but it's not so long, maybe play it with someone who hasn't played it 8 times like Ricky has, and just practice it. Because even Ricky was saying that for as many times as he's played the game, this particular playthrough, he was like, I'm going to try something completely different. And he destroyed us with it. But he said that he has found so many different paths, so many different things to just experiment with. And he has had a lot of fun doing that. And that does sound kind of neat. So I don't know. We'll see. I'm very glad I finally got to try this. It's a 2024 game, if you're wondering. Civolution. All right, up next. That was Thursday night. So then Friday, I think before we played Bomb Busters, my wife and I broke out Crafting the Cosmos. Yes, Jeremy Brooks just mentioned this a little while ago. This is a really, really interesting game from a company called Office Dog. I just realized there's a lot of loose components in here, so now they're probably all over the place. But whatever. This is a game where you're basically, the theme of it is you're trying to create a universe of all these different little nebulas, and you're doing that by placing out stars of 4 different elements: hydrogen, helium, carbon, and oxygen. You're trying to place out little life tokens around these nebula. Each nebula has anywhere from, I believe it's 4 to 6 different elements that you have to surround it with. When you have the right elements around it, that nebula flips over, you score points, and then it has a place that you can start to develop life. And if you manage to surround that nebula again with life tokens, which go into different spots on the board, then you can put a life token on that nebula. And that's the one element I'm going to try and remember to come back to in a moment, because there's one part of the game I wasn't crazy about. And there's a ton of other crap going on in here. You have these power cards that you can accumulate throughout the game that kind of give you some rule-breaking abilities. You have energy cards that you collect, which they can just be tokens. They don't really need to be cards. But they're a card that you then spend to either get the power cards, or cards that you spend to trigger effects of the power cards you've already gotten. One of the main elements of the game is that there's kind of a plus sign pattern in the middle of this market board, or I think it's called a console in the rule book. And you have a couple of these marbles, kind of plasticky marbles. You have 1 in each player color for the people playing, and then 4 black generic marbles. And at the beginning of your turn, you can move up to 3 things, 1 space clockwise in this plus sign pattern. One of the movements has to be of your own player color. So you have to move yourself, and you can move up to 2 additional of those black marbles. You can't move any other player. And then wherever the marbles sort of end up, wherever yours is, you get a special benefit from that slot. And then all the other ones, including other players, will trigger other rewards for you of either resources that you get, or life that you get, or movement points, or whatever else. The ability to turn a star into a supernova, which makes it a wild, etc., 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 etc. And then what you do is, for the rest of that turn, you just spend everything that you have. So if you have life tokens, you're putting them out. If you have stars, you put them out. If you trigger a nebula, you get to flip the nebula over and score the points. There's these little time tracker things that can move, that can give you additional stars and additional points, whatever. You can move your stars around. And so again, you just spend everything that you possibly can. Anything that you don't use just gets trashed at the end of your turn. What that does mean is that the downtime can be a little long, especially later in the game when you have all these extra abilities out and all these things that you can fire off, and you're kind of sitting there going, I'm just waiting for my turn. And I did read a comment online that, and this is a big deal, folks need to pay attention to this, designers. If you're doing a 4-player game, at the end of the round, if you move the player marker to the player to your left, then the person who was the first player has to wait 6 turns to go again. And usually by the time it's their turn, they hate your damn game. Obsession used to do that. Even he recognized it and fixed it before the final edition went to print. Office Dog missed the memo. Again, we played it too. It wasn't a problem. But I read some comments online saying, oh my God, the downtime of this in a 4-player game is absurd. And with the fact that there's almost no interaction, except for those little marbles you're moving around, there's no reason to play this at more than 2 players. Personal opinion and common consensus so far online. Anyways, it looks fantastic. Component quality is off the charts. The only thing I didn't like was that these little life tokens are about the size of a nerd's candy. And my big sausage fingers could not pick the damn things up to save my life, especially if I was putting them between these little stars, which you're going to see in these pictures, are taller, like almost 1 inch tall. And I've got this little candy in the little indent in the board in between. And it got to the point that I was just going, hey, look, hon, I have these 4. I'm going to put them there. Good enough. And I'm going to put this life token on top. The last part that I didn't care for so much was those life tokens, because they range in score anywhere from 4 to 8 points. And they're kind of randomly you're supposed to pile them up. But there's so many of them. I just made a pile. You're stacking them up. I just made a pile. And you're just sort of drafting them randomly. There's a couple that are higher value, which you go through first, whatever. But I got a couple of them. I actually got a good bit more than my wife had. She had a couple more of these time tokens scored than I did. So we actually went in endgame scoring with her ahead of me. But I had a ton more of these life tokens, and I thought, I got this. But I had drawn a couple of low numbers. And the couple that she drew were slightly higher numbers. And so she won by a point just because of the luck of the draw off those life tokens. Now, I wasn't upset about it. In fact, she was kind of miffed because she thought I was whooping her ass in that game. It turns out I wasn't. But I didn't really like the fact that it's just complete luck of the draw on those tokens that can swing a game, that closely. I don't love that. It's fine in a game that plays in like 20 minutes, like the Taco Bell card game, which does exactly the same thing, mind you. But this thing's like an hour and a half. I don't really like that kind of random point swinginess in a game of that length. Anyways, beautiful looking game. I did enjoy it. My wife kind of liked it. I would like to check this one out a little bit more. I don't know that it has a ton of staying power, but it looks fantastic. Again, I think a great game at 2, if that's your speed. Crafting the Cosmos. Played Bomb Busters again. Okay, so for the next 2, I don't have these games. So the first one we played today was Tesseract. This is a cooperative game. I did not realize this was a cooperative game. I've grabbed a couple of photos of this. The teach on this was pretty rough. I really didn't know what we were doing. I had to ask a ton of questions in our first couple of rounds. But the idea, as best as I can try and explain it, is you're getting these crazy looking dice off of this sort of spinning cube of dice, and you're trying to get them committed, I think was the right word, or stored or whatever. You have a board in the middle of the table with rows of the 4 colors of dice in the game, which was like a purple, yellow, orange, and blue, numbered 1 to 6. And if you look at the dice, I don't know if I have any good close-ups of the dice, but they've got these crazy symbols on them, but then each one has round pips, and there's 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6. So they're standard dice. You just have cutesy little patterns on each side instead of just plain old pips, which is fine. Once I figured it out, no big deal. But you're trying to get those dice onto that board. The only way that you can do that is you have to have a set of 3, and one of them goes on the board. So you can either have 3 of a kind or a run, 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 5, 6. And they either have to be the same color or each die has to be a different color. And that right there made it really, really tricky game. You're trying to collect these dice. You're taking them from that cube. You have the ability to transfer dice from other players with their permission. There's a lot of, obviously commingling and discussion. Okay, well, if I take this, then I can pip it down. That's one of your abilities. You have a couple actions you can take on your turn. You take 3 actions. You can take the same action multiple times if you want. And then you have these research cards that you'll get one of. You can upgrade them throughout the game. You can get more throughout the game when you commit dice to the board, etc., etc., etc. And so on your turn, you're triggering 3 actions and possibly 1 research card. And then you have to take the lowest physically stacked die off the Tesseract, chuck it, and it goes into a prime board. And if you get 3 or more of the same number in the prime board, then there's a bust, a breach. And if there's a breach, you simply go up a track, and on the 7th breach, you lose the game. If the Tesseract board ever becomes empty, you lose the game. And that's it. The only way you win the game is to fill that dice board. I didn't care for this. And the biggest reason I didn't care for this, I don't know if the gentleman was going to see it, but we had one guy at the table who self-admittedly was trying to just min-max every turn of every other player. And so right away on your turn, he's sitting there telling you what you should do, or this guy could do this, or you could do this. You could be in the middle of a sentence and go, well, I know you could do this, and just kept alpha gaming really, really bad and kept dragging out, trying to look at all the infinite possibilities that we could take in that round. And there were a couple turns that lasted well over 10 minutes. And I was playing with another gentleman's wife, and we were both like, dude, this has got to stop. This game's taking way too long. The box says like 45 to 60 minutes. We played for almost 2 hours, and we lost. And it's like, we sat here for so long on a little co-op puzzle game because one guy was just bound and determined to win this thing. And he made it a pretty miserable experience, I think, for a lot of us. He loved it, and that's great. And he kind of understood, even at one point, one of us kind of yelled at him like, you're taking too long. Just take your turn. Let's go. That's probably why we lost it, because that one turn he didn't think through. But man, it's kind of a PSA. And this is one of those games I'll never play it again, because co-op games where one person can dictate the entire turn, because everything's common knowledge. There's no secrets. There's no special abilities that I have that you don't have. We're all on a level playing field. So you might as well just play it solo with 4 boards. You don't need us here, which is not the way to approach these games ever. So that was Tesseract. Didn't care for. Then we played Beast and Diplomacy. I already covered that one. The last game that I played today before I went ahead and I headed home was Wreck Raiders. Wreck Raiders is a very cutesy little, very beautifully illustrated game from Kids Table Board Games. Now, I've had a couple of Kids Table Board Games. We still have Fossilis. I got rid of Creature Comforts because the whole idea behind Kids Table Board Games is that they're to have kids at your table. They're family weight games. Often beautiful games, often very well made games. A lot of them do come through Kickstarter. Fossilis has all these little plastic bones. It's a gorgeous game. My daughter used to really love it when she was younger. But Maple Valley, I think, no, it wasn't Maple Valley. It was Creature Comforts. Was about a 2.5 to 3 hour board game for 3 or 4 people. Not because of AP, because there was just so much stuff to do in the game. And a lot of people have chatted with us like, yeah, the game was just stupid long when you're trying to play with kids. It was ages like 6 and up. You cannot have a 2 hour game for 6 and up. Anyways, Wreck Raiders, not that bad in that regard. Game played pretty quick, but the game was pretty bad. The idea behind this, quite simply, is you check a bunch of dice. Each player will then draft 1 die. So there's 1 die per player. So basically, you're going to chuck your dice. You're going to pick one, and then you're going to be the last player. The next player will then chuck the 5 dice. They'll get to eventually draft 2 of them. So you're not waiting 6 turns until your next play, because you take the first and the last turn, and then the next player will chuck the dice, and the process continues. You're drafting a die. You've got a couple of divers. You got 4 rec locations on the board and a beach. And each rec location and the beach has a number 1-6. So you're going to draft a die, and you're going to put one of your divers onto any of those 5 locations, the 4 wrecks, shipwrecks, or the beach. But you cannot be at a location twice. We had, in our case, 4 divers, I think based on player count. So you cannot be at each location more than once, except for the beach. And that's it. You put your guy down, you take a little token that corresponds to that wreck. If you go to the beach, you get to take some shells. The shells give you all kinds of crazy, like drafting extra things or changing a value of a die or whatever. And that's it. But if you place your diver at a spot, let's say the 3, and there is another diver already at the 2 or the 4, which remember cannot be your own, then the player with the 2 or the 4, they also get a treasure location just like you do. So I come here, I get that treasure piece. Those 2 players also get a treasure piece. Then maybe someone comes in and places on their side, and that player gets another treasure piece. And so basically, there's a good chance that 1 or more players around the table are going to get thrown a lot of extra rewards that they don't have to work towards. They don't have to take an action for. And also, if you get bumped, if someone plays the number that you're at, you get bumped to the beach, which is where you get those shells that lets you do a whole bunch of game-breaking stuff. And so the player sitting across from me just constantly kept getting bumped, constantly kept getting players placing next to him. And he amassed a ton of these treasures. He turned them in to get a ton of the scoring cards. Basically, once you match a pattern, you take a scoring card. First player to 4 scoring cards ends the game. Well, he had 4. The rest of us had like 2. And so it was kind of like, what are we doing? Why are we even playing this? We're just basically waiting for him to win. I think I got the bonus once of having someone place next to me. I think I got bumped twice in the whole game. And so I had half of that gentleman's score. And I was like, I mean, again, it's a kid's game. A lot of kids may not really think that kind of stuff through, but it's like, if your game is so wildly unbalanced that someone can have half of someone else's score, I wouldn't call that a kid's game. I don't even know if I'd call it a game. So I was pretty disappointed with this. I was going into it kind of hoping that it would be something that my daughter would like, as my daughter loves marine life. And this has, you can, on the side, one of the other things that you can do is that you can sort of build like aquariums, and there were like sharks and dolphins and axolotls and all kinds of little cute fish and such. And I thought she'd love that mechanic. I didn't even get to finish one because the game ended so quickly because this guy had so many cards. So yeah, that went from, ooh, maybe to absolutely not in about an hour. That was Wreck Raiders. And hey, guess what? That is all the games here to chat about in episode number 67. However, I do have a question for next week. Now, real quick, before I get into this, I'm traveling in the middle of this week to go down to Asheville to see my parents, Asheville, North Carolina. Then we're going to go to Charlotte, North Carolina. We're going to go to an amusement park called Carowinds. My employer gives us tickets once a year to go anywhere, almost anywhere we want. And we picked Carowinds this year. I'm going to try and get some games played this week, but I don't think there's going to be a lot of gaming this week. I'm trying to stick to an episode every week. So what I'm going to do is kind of ask a little bit more of an involved question for next week. Hopefully I'll have maybe 2 games or so that I can chat about next week. I doubt I'm going to have anything new. I'm kind of not buying any games right now because my unplayed list is massive. But anyway, so I'm going to have a slightly more involved topic. And what that is for next week is, what in your mind makes a game light or heavy? And again, this is in terms of complexity. So we talk about a lightweight game, a medium weight game. I see a lot of medium to medium heavyweight. I don't know what that means. And I don't know what that means. So it's kind of like, what do you think that means? And this will be interesting because it's a topic that's easily skewed based on your own interests. So like, I know CR Pole is a big fan of Monopoly. I know a lot of folks would consider Monopoly to be a pretty lightweight game. But if it's something you play a lot, maybe you see other tactics to it, other folks maybe don't, you might consider it to be a medium weight game. And so I'm kind of curious, what makes a game, when you hear lightweight, heavyweight, medium weight game, what does that make you think? How would you describe that? Is there a certain element of a game that makes you immediately think, oh, it's a heavyweight game? Or if I'm just chucking dice, that's a lightweight game. Who knows? So I'm kind of curious. I'm also kind of curious maybe which you prefer, but I'm actually pretty sure we've covered that topic before. Feel free to answer that. I don't know if I'll use it, but we'll see. So anyways, that's what I want to chat about next week, is the weight of games. Folks, that is it for episode number 67. I'll get this episode out as soon as I possibly can. Definitely here in just the next couple of days. Anyways, thanks for watching. Thanks for your comments. As always, I'm looking forward to the next episode. Some neat stuff coming up here, I think, for the rest of the year. Chat with you soon. Cheers.